All right, good afternoon, everyone. Before we get into our next lessons, I thought I'll take you through another very important area because I'm planning to use the Scrum method to get the rest of the work going, right? So it's easy to manage the project this way. So rather than hacking the code, we should also learn how to manage the code. So we looked at, I think last few weeks, we were installing Laravel. We got it going and it was all running in my laptop. Now, next, what I want to do is to push it to a code repo and from there also get into some sort of feature management, right? So before I get to that, I thought I'll share some time talking about how we are going to do that. So for this method, I'm using one of the agile methods called the Scrum method, right? So let's go through this method and see how we can actually get it done with our code. So before we speak about Scrum, let's look at the different ways of software development management, right? We talked about the waterfall method where we do one chunk, go to the next and next and next and next. Well, we all know it's not the way in the practical world we work, right? We work on things, and while we are doing things, we get changes, we get change requests, and then we need to incorporate it and whatnot. So agile methods rather are invented or introduced to solve this kind of dynamic issues because we are living in a dynamic environment. Our project may be very complex and we might not have very clear idea about all the algorithm issues, challenges we will be facing with our project. So what we do is we break it down into small chunks called sprints, and then the sprint also broken down further into features. And these features may be coming from something called the user stories, which are part of our BA document or the SRS document. So I think first we need to go back to the beginning, which is the marketing team bring us the sale, right? And then it goes to our business analysis analyst or the analysis team. And from there, we elaborate what the requirement is. Okay. That's where I'm going to start. So first, let's look at a definition. So Scrum is the method I'm going to use. There are so many other ways. There is something called Kanban boards and, a few other things are there. But I like this one because it's dynamic and it supports simple to complex project management in a team environment. Okay. So even if you have two people in the team, I strongly suggest you go through a mechanism like this. That way, you have the entire source code and the history of changes recorded. So if you want to make some changes later, you always know where to go back. And also you can stop blaming, blaming other person or the other person for, doing something or the other. So the entire history, the auditing is available online. You can just go back and see which, say, for example, which version has which issue, right, or feature. So anyways, Scrum is an agile team collaboration framework. Like I said, whether it's a small or a large team, it's a collaboration mechanism, right? And we specifically use in software development, but you can also use it for any other area as well. Let's say you're developing some artwork, or you're developing a book, you're developing a website, or even you're developing, let's say, a house, you're building a house or something. You can use the Scrum Agile method if you want to, right? So it prescribes for teams, not for individual person, but no harm using it also. And it breaks down work into something called goals to be completed within time-boxed iterations called sprint. So we'll get to each of these detail. Yeah. Now, remember, I said we go back to the beginning. Okay, so this is what happens when a company gets the business, software development project, and BA along with the architect and the developers, they develop this document called the SRS. software requirement specification, right? So as you can see, it has few main topics. Number one is the version, right? Then introduction, overall description, specific requirement, appendices. These are the 5 main areas of the document. And if you take each one, like say version has certain things here. I think we spoke about how to identify version numbers also, right? It's called SEMWA. You can look at our previous lesson on that. Reason for change, if you are changing the SRS, and then updated date and whatnot. Under the overall description, we have product perspective, product function, user characteristics, constraints, assumptions, and appointment of requirements, portions of requirements. So these are things that we write maybe for the first time, but that'll be there throughout the project so that anyone coming new to the project, by reading this, will understand the entire picture. And apart from that, there is also introduction. Under that, we have purpose, scope, definition, acronyms, abbreviations, like, the special words, for example, the terminology of the project, right? Because if you are developing an accounting package, we need to explain the accounting terms here. So all that will be in the document as well. And then the references, like if there are any external things that you want to bring in here, and then an overview of the project. And the real meat of the document actually goes into the specific requirements. Right? That's where the real requirements are recorded. So that's a heavy portion. So user requirement is exactly what the user told us that they want. And then for us to run it, what do we need from a system point of view? Those are the system requirements, right? Like the hardware, software, RAM, and server sizes, and network speed, all that goes under system requirement. And anything helpful will go down to the appendices, right? And then, of course, you have a table of contents as well. So this is the SRS document. In another way, if you break it down into something simple, okay, here is another diagram. The functional areas of the project, performance areas of the project, the interfaces, maintainability, reliability, safety, quality. These are, again, some of the areas that we can address within the SRS. Okay, so now we know what is needed. Then we go to this document. This is called the use case scenario. So in this one, we want to identify who are the real users of the system. Okay. Now, I use the word system. The system is this diagram, actually the rectangle here. This is the system. Okay. So, whatever that is within the rectangle is the one we are developing. Okay. So, the people that you see outside are the users. Now, this as an example, there is a user. Okay. So, the user can be a potential customer or a registered customer. If it is a potential customer, then he has to register himself, or he or she, right? And then view items. So those are the two things. Now, this is a very simplified diagram. So potential customer can either register or look at available items. Whereas a registered customer can purchase and also subscribe, maybe to newsletter and things like that. So the system is called online store. So these terms are very important, and these items, icons, are all important as well. Okay. And on the right-hand side, you can see other people or more people. So there is a system verification person, then there's an administrator person, then there's a PayPal person. Now, although we draw person here, this might be another software system also. It doesn't have to be a person, a human as well. Yeah. So the system verification happens for all, like view item, registration of users, purchasing, as well as subscription. Whereas administrator is only interested in purchasing only. The PayPal, the payment mechanism, is interested in subscription and purchasing. Again, I'm saying this is a very simplified diagram. It's not a complete system. Yeah. But you get the picture. So from the SRS, we develop this. So what are we having here? Main users of the system, right? And of course, in the in between these, there is another step. Sometimes we call it user stories or story elaboration. So, for example, we will write something like, as a user, I want to register myself so that I can get benefits of a registered user. So that is called user story. You write down that sentence in a card. Or there can be another one. As a registered customer, I want to purchase products. That can be another requirement. It's called a user story. So these are the things coming in. And this circular, the ellipse you see are called the features. Now, these are the features we are going to develop in our system. Remember? So now the picture is very clear, isn't it? From SRS, we understand what are the features we need to develop and who are the people going to use these features. Okay, remember, every person here cannot use every feature. Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute. So once you get the use case done, you start writing down all those things in the ellipse. You write it down in a section called backlog. Those are the features, right? Now, for example, if I go back here, there is a feature called view items. Another one called register users. Another one called purchase items. Another one called subscribe users. So these are features. So these four can go to the backlog. We call it a backlog because these are the things that we can, take it out and do. And then we need a software system to manage this whole thing. So I'm going to use Jira. There's a free package there, so we can all try that. So we load the backlog to Jira, and then from there we can. Now this is actually called a Kanban board. So we take few things to the to-do column. So in that we can actually drag it. So we can drag it from the backlog to the to-do area, to-do column. And we can also, of course, assign each feature to an individual person. And the reason why we are using a software is apart from assigning the person, we can also assign a code, a repository, or a branch for that particular feature. So when the person want to develop it, he will pull the branch, work on that so that whatever he's doing is not disturbing to other people. The source code is safe. And after he started working on it, he will move back to in progress column, right? After he has done it, he will push that to the testing column. So when he push that to the testing column, that means his code is pushed to the repository again. Now in the to-do, he may be checking out the code, but actually he's checking in the code. Sorry, I don't know what I'm saying. It's like a hotel. So checking in is going to the hotel, checking out is going out of the hotel. So, so you take the code out, you work on that is checkout. And once you're done with it, you push it. That is, you push the code back to the repo so that the testing can actually, not testing. Generally, there is a person to do code reviews. So the code reviewer will review the code and then accept it to the master branch. And then it is going for the testing server. And then once the testing team is done with their testing, it goes to the done area. So again, somebody maybe need to give the okay, and that will go to the live server. So this is like the usual process of pushing the code from SRS, use cases, backlog to testing and done. Now, when it comes to backlog to to-do, okay, so these two, jumping from backlog to to-do, this is kind of a story that we work on. So what you can see on the left-hand side are the things that we want to sort of pull from the backlog. Yeah. So there are lots of stuff here. So there is also things that we discuss after the sprint is over and whatnot. So we take them in and we group set of features that can be completed within about 2 weeks. It can be actually up to 1 month. So it's up to you. So are we going to do 1 week sprint, 2 week sprint, 3 week, or one month sprint, depending on the caliber of the staff and also the complexity of the project? We can decide the size of the sprint. So sprint is a time box, we call it. Yeah, it can be 1 week or 2 weeks. So what we do for sprint 1 is from the backlog. Let's say you had 100 features. Okay, in our example, we had 4 features, right? So let's say we take the first 2 features, we take that into sprint 1, right? And then we assign, there are 2 features, we assign it to 2 people, saying, okay, person 1 is doing feature 1, person 2 is doing feature 2. So that's sprint 1. And then we start the sprint. We also can say, right, okay, sprint is starting on Monday. And there we go. So Monday morning, we meet again at, let's say, 8 to 8:30. We meet and say, right, so tell me what is going on. So they don't need to explain what is going on. They'll say, right, everything under control, but I had a problem with my database connection, but I fixed it this way, that way. It's a very short meeting where if someone wants help, they will be given there. So generally, it's a 15-minute to 30-minute maximum meeting. So once the sprint 1 is over, we have a goal. We have achieved a goal, right? So that means now, if we go back to our example here, sprint 1 has these 2 features, view item and register. So after this, we have a goal of getting any potential customer to register and view items. So we can tell our customer, hey, look, we've done it. We've done registration and view items. Please have a look at it. So they will have a look at it and then say, fine. So then maybe customer might say, look, what if I want the potential customer also to do subscription, right? So in that case, we may either bring the subscription also back to this or do some changes depending on what the requirement is. Now, since the sprint is over, he will only verify what is there. Now, once that is okay, we can then go to sprint 2, where we will, let's say, talk about purchasing only. So purchase is a heavy one. So we might require maybe, let's say, 2 people to work on it. So we'll assign that again, backlog to do. We assign to someone. And that can be our sprint 2. And once that is over, we go through the same story, sprint 3. Sprint 3, we do the final one. All our features are done. Project is complete. Of course, there are very interesting reports that we can generate after this event. Or is another way to look at the sprint planning, right? The different softwares are there to give us different views. So here we have the project name, as you can see, task name, then feature type, responsibility of the person, like who is responsible, story point. Now, this is another interesting one. Story point is like a point scheme. You see, to develop the user registration, what is the weight of that? From, say, 1 to 10, how much effort is required? So user registration is a pretty heavy duty one. So I would put about 8 there. To view items, I don't think it's a big one. So I will put about maybe 3 out of 10. Yeah. So what we do is when you are developing, when you are picking things for a sprint, we add those story point to come to a certain conclusion. Let's say we can only do 50 story point per 2 weeks in our organization, right? So because this depends on every organization, every person also. Okay. So I said 3 because of the people we have. If we have very experienced people, they might say, oh, I'll do it within story point 2. Right. So it actually depends on the staff skill set. And then the start date and end date, and also duration, status, priority, and then comments. And if you look at down here, we have a Gantt chart, right? So we are taking the start date, end date, and then we put it on the Gantt chart. And we are bringing in the task name there. So we can also see the task name here. So you can use Microsoft Project kind of view as well to look at your agile methodology. Here's another way to look at it. So as you notice, we have a timeline here. It's like a Gantt chart. So in this space, on the leftmost, we have product planning. We plan the product. We discuss from SRS to use cases, identification of the features. They all happen here, product planning, right? And then we do the sprint one. So there is pre-planning and the sprint going on. Yeah. So pre-planning and sprint one. So it's going on for 2 weeks. And then once the sprint one is over, we don't jump directly to sprint two. There is some time in between. It's called retrospecting, where we discuss what happened during the last sprint. That way we can do some adjustments and we start the sprint two. Okay. You see, sprint two also has another little extra time coming from the planning stage as well. And then sprint two, you see at the end, we have something called a release. So this is the story we can show our customer as well. Yeah. So customer knows, okay, by sprint two, we should have released 10.12, and that's release A, and he may be able to see that. And then we go through sprint three, and then we have a release B. Now, actually, this 10.12 and 10.31, we can't sort of give a number as such. Now, we've taken the dates here, yeah. But if you use SEM version, it will be automatically incremented. Yeah, so you might have some number. So at the end only, you will know what the number is. So here, they've taken just the date, right? 1012 is the date here, 1031 is the date here. Okay. Here's another way to look at the whole thing, right? So product backlog, we have a lot of features here. We pick up some features and that comes to something called the sprint backlog. These are the selected stories and their tasks. And then goes to planning. This is the sprint planning. And then sprint programming, that is implementation. And then we do review and sprint is over. We do retrospecting. That is the time between sprints, right? Studying what happened during the previous sprint. Those are the completed features. And then they go out. So throughout this, we also have something called the daily scrum. Daily, you are discussing these implementations to figure out whether there are any issues. Right. So we looked at this, right? A very linear thing. Now, there are rituals like the religious rituals. We have certain rituals in Scrum. We call it ceremonies. 5 Scrum ceremonies. So ceremonies are like special days, you need to participate in this. First one is sprint planning. Everyone need to get together, whoever working in the project, to plan the sprint, because if you are a developer, they'll ask you like, how much time do you want for this feature? You can't say I want 3 months. You must back it up with some data and say, okay, I did a similar one in a certain other project, so it took me this much time, so I'm assuming this might take, say, 1 week or 3 days or whatever, right? So sprint planning is where you discuss things and also you give the points to your stories. And then the review. So you then start adding things together and then try to figure out, okay, how much of work you can do within the 2 weeks and things like that. And then the backlog refinement. So what do you do to what out of the features, you load it to backlog, and then you can also figure out, okay, you can clean things up. Out of all the backlog, what are the things going to the sprint, right? What are they going to your other areas? So are we going to keep certain things to later? And then you also start adding some priorities, stuff like that. And then you have your daily stand-up, right? Every day this happens. And at the end of the sprint, we have a sprint retrospective. So these are 5 ceremonies that must be happening for every Agile Scrum project. Right. Now, we talked about this here. Do you notice there are different kind of roles available here? Or rather, when you look at the people, there are roles. I can identify the first person, the user or the potential customer as one role. Let's say just a user, and then this person, registered user, is we can call them a customer. This can be, we can use the word guest. A guest is someone who doesn't have an account, right? Whereas a customer is a registered person. So customer has the account. He can log in. So guest is one role. Customer is another role. We have a verifier can be another role. Administrator can be another role. And PayPal can be another role. So why is that important? Because when it comes to permission, we need those roles. So we don't allow everyone to do everything. Okay. So after we sort of come up with the features, we bring in those roles as well to a chart like this. Right? Here's an example. So we assign each user to one of the roles, or sometimes to many roles also, depending on the situation and the project. But generally, it should be assigned to one role. Yeah. The top priority goes to super admin, then admin, then the supervisor, no, then manager, supervisor, customer, and the guests, something like that. On the left, the first column, you can see the permission, or the, let's say, the feature or the permission. Yeah. And who can do it? For example, weaving dashboard, admin can do, manager can do, editor can do, weaver can do. Exporting list of users, admin can do, manager can do, but editor cannot do, weaver cannot do. So we need this chart also very in the early stages of developing, right? So each role has access to certain action. And this is, by the way, suitable for bulk permission, meaning you can, whenever you are adding a person, that person goes into one of the role, and then you don't need to change anything. That role controls what the person can and cannot do. So this is known as role-based access control, RBAC. Very famous. Next is sometimes, even though a certain person is belongs to a role, you still need to do some fine tuning. Now, let's say there is a supervisor. Generally, supervisors cannot print report, but you have this one supervisor. You want that supervisor to able to print the report. Now, only admin can print the report. You don't want to make this person admin, and you want to keep this person as a supervisor, but only give printing permission. So from the role-based permission, role-based access, actually, we come to permission-based access, where we turn on each permission on and off to individual people. That also can be done. So these are, by the way, two different ways, okay? Two different ways of access control. So first is role-based. Second is permission-based. Each user has access to certain action. And you get granular control. Granular control means, very fine control you can do. So these are two different ways of management. Now, this is not very clear on the agile feature list. That is why I said this information must be coming under the feature discussion, right? Who can do what is also part of that. So generally what we do is we don't turn on the permission system in the beginning. We allow everyone to do everything, and later we bring in a permission system. So now in doing so, some people don't like it. Some people want to start from day one and apply the permission. Now this is where selecting a framework is very important. If you select a framework, like say a role-based access control framework, it will take care of that for you. You just need to develop this table and it will take care of that. So you can maybe bring in it later by allowing everyone to do everything, or you can start from day one, the role-based permission as well. Okay, so what I wanted to explain you was how one of the agile methods, Scrum, is helpful in developing a very dynamic project management mechanism. for developing software. So if you're doing your final year projects, I strongly recommend you to study Scrum. I shared a Coursera 2-hour project as well, 2-hour tutorial that will even give you a certificate. So that explains everything you do on this using Jira, right? You learn Jira and you learn the Scrum method as well, Agile Scrum method. So what does it do? Well, it prescribes for teams to break work into goals to be completed within time box iteration called sprint. I guess now you understand, right? So this is prescribed for teams, not for individual people, so that you can break your goals into time box, like time base boxes called sprint. And each sprint is no longer than 1 month and commonly lasts 2 weeks. Again, like I said, it can be depending on your project and the expertise within the team. The Scrum team assesses progress in time box stand-up meetings of 1 to 15 minutes called daily Scrum. So this is daily Scrum, either morning, afternoon, evening, whatever. It must happen every day at the same time. At the end of the sprint, the team holds 2 further meetings. So once this is over, you have 2 meetings. One is called the sprint review to demonstrate the work for stakeholders and solicit feedback. That is, you are demonstrating it to your customers, saying, look, this is what we've done in our sprint. And number 2 is internal sprint retrospective. That is, internal team is having a meeting about how did we do this? What were the challenges we faced? And what are the things we learned so that we can take it to the next sprint, right? And there is a very special person within this Scrum team called the Scrum Master. So Scrum Master's job is to teach people who don't know Scrum and then get them going and sort of manage the team meetings, informing the others and all that stuff. So Scrum Master is like a monitor. Okay, so I strongly suggest, recommend applying this to your final year project, especially the stand-up meeting. So if you meet up, if you can at least, if you can't meet every day online, at least have a 15-minute chat, maybe in the evening or morning, to say what happened. Just a cool meeting. So then when you have a discipline like that, your project will be on time. Right, so that's all I have today. So next up, we'll go back to our Laravel code and see how we can push that to the Bitbucket, which is the code repo of Jira. And then also connect that to Jira so that we can do what we discussed here under the Scrum. All right, see you then.